and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guests today are from the Nature Conservancy in Connecticut, and in the first segment, we have Frogart Ryan, State Director of the Nature Conservancy in Connecticut. It's your first time on the show, and it's a pleasure having you on the show, so welcome.
Well, thank you, Sean. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
We had your Rhode Island brethren on not too long ago, so we definitely had to get the Connecticut side on. And for those that may not be familiar with the Nature Conservancy in general, what is it?
Yeah, terrific. Absolutely. I'd be happy to talk about the Nature Conservancy. So we're all about conservation, and the Nature Conservancy opened its doors about 62 years ago.
Wow.
We were founded by two scientists, and we are in all 50 states in the United States. I represent the Connecticut chapter, and then we have very close working relationships with over 30 different countries throughout the world. So we're global, yet we have very deep roots locally. And our mission is to preserve the lands and waters on which our life depends.
And since land and waterways in particular cross boundaries, state lines, I would imagine that you have to work with your neighbors quite a bit.
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I work closely with the people in Rhode Island as well as my fellow state directors in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and beyond, because nature knows no boundaries. So that's definitely very true.
Now, there are a lot of issues, and everybody wants to save the world as much as possible, but I would imagine you have to prioritize, and what's in the most need of preserving or saving or repairing any of those?
Yeah, definitely. We do have to prioritize. So in Connecticut, we have four priorities. We work on land, and we work on water, and then we support programs throughout the world where that makes sense. So I begin with land, because if you go back to our mission, we try to preserve all lands and waters on which life depends. And the key word in my mind really is all. It includes people, because people are the ones that are making the difference. So we very much rely on everyone to help us in pursuit of our mission. Land preservation is what we're known for the most. And in our history, we have set aside 51,000 acres in Connecticut with the help of many partners. So we're very proud of that. And that translates into us having over 60 preserves speckled throughout the state. So you can imagine there's a lot of stewardship efforts that go along with that. People come visit our preserves and help us keep them up. So that's really great to have that track record to work on. And so we certainly have very deep roots in land. But we realize land is it's not going to be enough. Looking forward, we have to play in water. We have to work on water. And particularly in the New England states, we have the very iconic Connecticut River, which spans all the way from Canada. It empties into the Long Island Sound. And of course, we have the Long Island Sound in our backyard. And the issues are unprecedented, and they take a lot of work, but we think we're up to the task, particularly the way we go about solving issues. We work collaborative with many partners. We're science-driven, solution-oriented, and we make things work. So.
Now, in Connecticut, even though it's a small state by comparison, there's a lot of, I guess, untapped land, a lot of woods, forest area, a lot of nature in Connecticut. It's a beautiful state. Don't you think?
It is absolutely a beautiful state. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think people really here have a great track record of being visionary folks who have set aside lands and are very willing and open to put their time and efforts into being sure it stays that way, and we're ready for the future.
Now, I would imagine that the Nature Conservancy isn't necessarily expansion of people or business in general, because you understand that that's just a part of life. It's sort of striking a balance and allowing nature in general to sort of coexist and have their space and us have our space, and just have sort of a balance is probably a good word. Don't you think?
Most definitely. Yeah. We're all about balance, because we depend on nature and vice versa. People, depend on nature. Nature depends on us. So it really is very important to work together, and we do precisely that. I mean, we work with governments, we work with towns, we work with the local land trusts, with businesses and what have you, because our track record really builds on creating solutions that are win-win for everyone versus creating adversary situations.
Yeah, somebody who's wants to develop and you don't want it to be an adversarial situation where you kind of are trying to protect something. Someone wants to build a high rise or something like that, and
Right.
you don't need that. What getting more specific? What are you the most concerned about right now?
That's a good question. I think it's really key to our work is awareness of people and then taking action. So the focus areas, aside from land, that we really work on hard is the Connecticut River and then Long Island Sound. And if we take the Connecticut River, for example, it's the iconic river, right? I mean, we all really treasure it for boating, fishing, and just to look at it. And it is the most dammed watershed in the nation, with 2,700 dams and 44,000 stream crossings. So there's a lot of work to be done. And many of these dams really have outlived their purpose. They had a purpose hundreds of years ago for industrial reasons, but now some of these dams are really not used anymore. Some of them are crumbling, might even be dangerous. So that concerns us because people depend on the river for drinking water and other uses. And then fish, if you think of nature for a second, fish obviously use the river to swim up and down. And if you put yourselves into the skin of a fish and the river is your highway, you're trying to go up to feed or to spawn, it's not so easy if there's like dam after dam after dam. So we're working hard to take the dams that can be taken out. And that's a big focus area for us.
Why would they not want to take them out? Is it simply a cost issue, or do they just don't want to? They don't think it's important, don't understand the urgency of the nature aspect of it?
Yeah, it's complex. So sometimes it is certainly a cost issue. It's expensive to deconstruct a dam, and so you can only do so many a year. But we have a lot of willing dam owners that like to work with us, and many other partners that we partner with, and then we're taking dams out every year. So, but it's a lot of them. So we have them prioritized, and we're going at it one dam at a time. There's some dams that can't come out, like hydropower dams, and that's perfectly understandable. It comes back to the balance piece again, and there we work again with dam owners to ensure that the dam might be managed in a way that is allowing for fish to circumvent the dam. So we build what's called a fish ladder, or a fishway, so the fish can still passage and go to their spawning or feeding grounds, yet the dam remains because we need it, we depend on it for various reasons. So I think that's a big area of focus. We're also working on floodplains along the Connecticut River, which have changed a lot over time. And there we're working on replanting and restoring the floodplains, particularly we're replanting the American elm tree, which was devastated by Dutch elm disease, but now we were able to find survivor trees and saplings from these, and we're planting them in the floodplains of the Connecticut River. Very rewarding work. We're doing that with school children and many volunteers. I planted a few last summer, and it was really made for a really good day. And then you have the vision that 100 years from now, the tree will be huge and giving shade again, and people can sit under it. So really nice to do.
Only drawback to that is because it takes 100 years, you can't see the results of you planting it, but the descendants can, and next generation
exactly.
can.
You just have to look forward. I mean, the tree that's planted was about like this big, but it'll grow. It'll grow. So you got to do it now.
Yeah, I could definitely sense hear the passion in your voice about it. You obviously love what you do, and think about what it's not a small difference. You plant a tree, that's a big deal. You're bringing back the natural environment.
Yeah, absolutely. One step at a time.
What about damage from things like, for example, Superstorm Sandy that just happened? Our friends over in Rhode Island, they had to rebuild dunes, and there were areas of beaches that were destroyed because of it. Do you have to deal with that much?
Yeah, we absolutely saw quite a bit of damage in some of our preserves, and we are trying to be proactive and address that. We did some beach grass planting not too far from here, so we certainly do that. I think the program that we have that really fits and addresses issues from storms very well is our Coastal Resilience Program. So my Director of Science has been working for the past 7 years, town by town by town, and he has worked with 20 communities along the coast to ensure that Connecticut will be the most resilient state that we can make it. And what we do is we work with town planners and community leaders on ensuring that nature has a seat at the table as we plan for the future. And it has been really well received. So people are ready to to roll up their sleeves and get to work jointly and figuring out, if there's a new school to be built, where should it be? And if there's a marsh that can still be protected, could it be protected, and could it help in the future to really absorb some of the waters that might be coming? And it's good to think about this jointly and really come up with solutions after spending some time with each other.
So you talked about the Connecticut River. Talk about what needs to be done with Long Island Sound as far as maybe a long-term goal.
Yeah, sure enough. So again, I feel it's like the window to the marine world for us, and people really treasure the Sound for cultural reasons, economical benefits, and over 20 million people live within an easy driving distance. So it's a really important asset for us, teeming with creatures, from finfish species to invertebrates to like seahorses and species of sea turtles. So it's an amazing resource for us to have. Yet there's issues mostly related to pollution. We're very concerned about that. Things have gotten much better, again, due to great efforts by people, but much work remains. And my colleague Chantal Collier would really go into the details of that. But I would say pollution is a big issue, and then working on coastal resilience, and I spoke to that a little earlier. So those are the two main efforts that we have on the Long Island Sound.
What's your opinion of the wind turbines that a lot of people want to kind of plop down out in the waterways, or maybe Long Island Sound? Do you have an issue with that, or is it a concern?
Well, I think the key there is we all will need energy in the future. So I think the key really is, again, it comes to the point of balance, and it comes to the point of where. And the first step really is to know where are the biodiversity hotspots in the Sound and in our adjacent states as well. Where is it that there is a lot of creatures, maybe having grounds where there's more than others, and then you can say, okay, it would be better if there has to be a siting for certain energy or other energy transmission lines or what have you, if it has to be sited, where is the best spot and which spots should be avoided. So that's, I think, the most important area to be clear about.
How's the Nature Conservancy funded, by the way?
Well, we're very grateful to our many members. So we're a membership organization, and so we're funded by generous donations. So.
And you occasionally have events where that's a revenue-generating event here or there throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, we surely do. We surely do.
And so those will probably be listed on the website. What is the website for people to go to?
That's great. It's www.nature.org/Connecticut. And we have a Facebook page as well, so like us on Facebook, and find out about events where you can come and help. Either you maintain a trail or plant some beach grasses, whatever you might enjoy. It's great. People can
talk
do
about
that.
what's going to come up on the second segment when Chantal, you said she's going to get more specific with with some of the things like Long Island and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chantal is my director of the Long Island Sound program, and so she works again across state boundaries together with our New York chapter, because Long Island Sound is split in the middle, so to speak. So she will talk in detail about the issues that the Sound faces and the work that she has been spending the last, really pretty much her career on. She joined us a few years ago, but she will be able to talk in more detail about pollution issues and what we're trying to do about it.
All right, we'll have her come up next. Frogart Ryan, State Director of the Nature Conservancy in Connecticut. Thanks for being a part of the show for a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll take a break and come back with our second guest. In the meantime, I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. Our guests today are from the Nature Conservancy in Connecticut, and in this second segment, it is Chantal Collier. She's the Long Island Sound Program Director for the Nature Conservancy. Welcome to the show. It's your first time on the show. So we're going to get a little bit more specific with Long Island and the programs that you're involved with it. So let's talk about your background and sort of what you do with the Nature Conservancy.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for having us on the show today. It's great to be here. My background is in marine science, and I actually grew up here in this area. We had a summer house when I was a child right on Long Island Sound, not too far from here, actually, in Black Point. So this is really the place where I learned to love the ocean and led me eventually to choose a career in marine biology and working in policy and conservation. That's taken me to many different places, but most recently with the Nature Conservancy, which I joined about 2 years ago now. And it's really wonderful to come back home to the place that inspired me to get involved in protecting important resources in the ocean like Long Island Sound.
It's kind of like your career path was mapped out for you from a very young child, where you used to play in the areas.
I think so, and I think, in many ways that's why it's so important for us to really protect these resources and also to share them with people and to encourage people to have an awareness of the value of natural resources, because they are such an important part of our life, whether or not we choose a career that's associated with them. Resources like Long Island Sound provide us with a wealth of benefits from
Why is it
economic
so
to
important?
aesthetic. Great question. Well, let's focus on Long Island Sound specifically. As Frogard mentioned earlier, it's a wonderful resource for the people of Connecticut and New York. Its shoreline spans 600 miles of the coastline of both states, and it's tremendously valuable to both the people and visitors to the region. If you think about the Sound itself, it's home to a vast array of marine life, animals, plants, and habitats like seagrasses and salt marsh that provide nurseries and shelter for commercially and recreationally important species. And it's also tremendously valuable to our economy. Traditional industries like fishing and recreational fishing, boating, commercial activities, maritime industry, those have generated $9 billion a year to the economy in the region. So it's a very valuable resource for many reasons. And so we need to protect it. But unfortunately, we have an area that's highly developed here in the Northeast, and within 50 miles of the Sound, we have over 20 million people. And so it's really incumbent on us, you, me, and all of our neighbors in the region to make sure that we protect this resource, because right now it's in a state of needing some attention.
Are you concerned? I mean, are you as a professional concerned?
I'm concerned, but I'm also very hopeful.
Okay.
I think, we have unfortunately a legacy of misusing and abusing our natural resources in the ocean. In Long Island Sound, some of those issues are associated with a long history of pollution, a lot of coastal development, and now we're looking at offshore development. And now we also are dealing with the impacts of climate change, which can be very detrimental not only to our natural communities, but also our human communities living along the shore.
Long Island in general protects us a bit too, doesn't it, from weather, storms, because it's like a natural barrier.
That's right. So Long Island Sound is actually an estuary, and so it's unique in that it's a habitat where fresh water from our rivers and streams meets the ocean, and that's a very productive environment that supports many different species. But it's also protected, as you said, in this case by Long Island, which acts as a bit of a barrier. So the Sound sees a lot of tidal influence, but it doesn't see quite necessarily the same level of wave energy as you would have in an open ocean environment.
Which means it's calmer a little bit, right?
Generally.
Yeah, not all the time.
But no, not all the time.
So, I asked you if you're concerned. What can people do? What's a common thing people can do if they care and they want to help out in some way? And I don't mean like financially. I just mean, in conjunction with nature, with the environment. What can people do or not do?
Well, there are many things that people can do. First, I think it's important to become aware of what the issues are in particular. I mentioned a couple of them. One of the big ones that we're focusing on in the Nature Conservancy is nitrogen pollution. Nitrogen is a naturally occurring element in the environment. In fact, it makes up about 80% of the air that we breathe. But in excess, it can become a problem. And what happens is it can fuel the growth of algae in the water, which can ultimately rob the water of oxygen when that algae decomposes and settles to the bottom. In Long Island Sound, we've had a history, many decades now, of hypoxia, which is a period in the summer where the western end in particular of the Sound becomes a dead zone because the oxygen levels get so low, and animals that can't flee can potentially die when that happens. So the source of getting to that problem is reducing the amount of nitrogen that we discharge into Long Island Sound. And there's been a lot of good work underway to address that, primarily focused on things like our sewage treatment plants. But nitrogen comes from a lot of other sources as well. It comes from the application of fertilizer, it comes from animal waste, it comes from septic systems and cesspools, and also from the atmosphere when we burn fossil fuels. So in order to really begin to get at the other sources of nitrogen, we need to better understand where they come from and what the relative contributions are from each of those different sources so we can target our efforts to do that. But while we are also learning to understand that, and the Nature Conservancy is leading research right now to better understand those sources and develop alternative technologies and policies and practices to minimize those other sources, we can also do things as individuals. And so that's, I think, what you were getting at.
Just like the average guy.
Exactly.
You know.
So some very simple things we can do are just in practices at home. For example, you can be more careful about how much fertilizer you apply on your home lawn. Thinking about the timing of it. You don't want to apply fertilizer before a heavy rainfall because most of it will just wash off into the storm drain right down into the ocean. You can also try things like leaving grass clippings on your lawn, which act as a natural fertilizer for your grass. And then you can also do things like making sure that you pick up animal waste and let other people know to do the same thing. Encourage your neighbors to have good habits.
It's interesting because you would think of that as being, it's obviously biodegradable, but I guess it's not necessarily a good thing to just leave it on the lawn.
That's right.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah. Is there anything in the Sound that is nearing what you would consider endangered at this point?
Yeah, I would say our seagrasses are probably in the most trouble in terms of a habitat. We have beautiful seagrass meadows, but we've lost about 90% of them at this point in time. And a lot of that is also attributed to the problem with nitrogen. It's detrimental to many habitats. It can actually cause other nuisance algae to grow and overgrow seagrass so that it no longer can have the sunlight that it needs to thrive. And ultimately, in order to bring back things like our seagrass meadows, we need to clean up the water and create a situation where natural recovery can occur. So by removing and reducing nitrogen from the system, we can help natural systems like seagrass meadows and our salt marshes to recover and to be resilient and to actually provide all the benefits to us that we depend on.
Things that people might not think about, you know, that or so. And anytime there's an adverse effect on one element of the environment, it's a domino effect, isn't it? It can slowly affect its way to the human population, and we suffer because something else is affected or goes away. Right?
That's right, and I think that's really where it all begins, with awareness and thinking about how the value of natural resources affects our life and how we benefit from that. So, I always like to encourage people to get out and enjoy the environment around them. Go out and take a walk on the beach, go kayaking, try your hand at shellfishing. Getting excited and getting to know those resources really what inspires people, I think, to care about them. And, if there are issues that you're concerned about, you can also take the time to contact your elected officials and let them know, that you want to make sure that those are things that they're working on to protect those resources that we depend on.
That's why they're there, so might as well utilize them. And again, like I mentioned with Frogart in the first segment, you're not necessarily against progress or development of some type with people, but maybe strike a balance like we talked about, right?
On the contrary, I think we have to work together with people, and there's a place for nature in making our lives, making our quality of life very good. I think we've known that all along, but in order to make sure that we continue to have those benefits, we need to protect those resources so that they're there for us in the future as well as today.
If nature goes away, then we're doomed.
Well, we would certainly lose our quality of life and many of the things that we depend on. When you think about the ocean, we depend on it as a source of food, as a source of energy, as a source of transportation, security. There are so many different ways that we use the ocean, and we're looking now to use the ocean in new ways as well. And as we do that, we need to make sure that we plan for that in ways that allows for traditional uses as well as new uses, and protecting those resources that we depend on at the same time.
I would imagine that you would encourage people to become a member of the Nature Conservancy and experience all that it has to offer? Yeah.
Absolutely. The Nature Conservancy is a wonderful organization, and we're in every state in the country, every state in the country, and also in 33 countries around the world. So no matter what your interests are in the natural environment, there's a place for you to engage with the Nature Conservancy.
As far as, aside from working with other states, neighbors, and stuff like that, do you also work with other agencies, environmental protection agencies, places like that? Yeah?
Absolutely. You have to. As I said earlier, it's incumbent on all of us to work together to work on these issues. And that means working with state and federal agencies, local towns, industry, and everybody who essentially has a stake in making sure that our resources are protected.
We're going to put the Nature Conservancy website up on the screen one more time. We are out of time. Chantal Carlier, Long Island Sound Program Director for the Nature Conservancy, and I know you're doing a lot of great work, so thank you for that. And thank you for being on the show today. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us, Sean.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. You can see this show, as well as many others, on our YouTube site. We will see you next time. Take care.